We are back on Monday, and we have decided to get back to some of our old standards of 10 to 15 minutes so that we can focus, stay focused.
Right? That's funny.
So today we're going to focus on what we think are, or what we know are the characteristics of God Jehovah. So we're going to go over a few of those. We probably won't get through them all, but we were going to go over a few of those, and I think they're pretty straightforward, although I kind of wonder sometimes if people really know who he is and what he stands for, but
I wonder the same.
it's kind of annoying. I'll say that. It's kind of annoying for people to think if they gather together and hold up a sign that the law should bend to them, regardless of the laws of the land and regardless of what people believe and regardless of religious beliefs, that whatever they think should become the primary and everybody should yield to whatever they think because they got people together and hold up signs.
I would agree.
Which is, let's say if we can think of something in the Bible where people gathered together and decided to make a decree and wanted the decree to become law, and let's see how that ended. So we may not get through many of these today, but we'll get through some. So first one that comes to mind to you, which one?
Thinking of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah. So,
but I can't remember the king's name to start with it.
Nebuchadnezzar, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So you had, I believe it was Nebuchadnezzar and Joseph. Of course, the people that we're talking about in this story came from Israel or Jerusalem in that area, and they were Hebrew, and they got carried off to Babylon.
Right.
So now already we have a bad state of affair for the people that got carried off.
Wasn't Daniel with them?
No, yeah.
Oh.
I don't think. So you see that it already has been a bad day for them because things happen that they don't think should have happened because they serve God, and God allowed somebody to come in and carry them off to another land. So I think we have to start there with a characteristic of God is serious when he says, I want you to obey me and do what I have set as ordinances and commandments, that we obey his commandments. Maybe tomorrow we could put up the 10 commandments just to remind everybody.
Yeah.
So we see that wasn't happening, and the priests and the people that were doing sacrifices weren't doing what they were supposed to do, so they got carried off to another land. So the fact that they got carried off to another land was already one thing we could say about God, is he's serious. When he says something, he is serious. And when he talks to a nation, he is serious as the people of a nation, even though there may be good people in the nation. So there was good people in the nation, but they still got carried off. And we have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and it was Daniel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of Joseph, yeah.
That's okay. You could get confused about that.
I did. Yeah.
That's funny. It is your name.
Yeah. So we find out that they're there. Right. And now we have a problem because the king has decreed that they would set up a statue. And the statue, every time they heard the sound of the clarinet, the psaltery, or the harp, that they would bow down and worship the statue. Although we had a few people that disagreed with this decree. And the way that the decree got passed was, as I started this story, a group of people got together, decided that they would come up with a good idea, and they would get the king to go along with it, and the king would sign it, and they would get rid of the believers in God Jehovah. That was their end thing, is not to allow them to continue to pray. I guess it just annoyed them. I don't know. And so they got people together, like we do today, and
Right.
a lot of things happen, and said, we all agree. So since we agree, it should become the laws of the land. And we're going to entice it to give the ruler of the land more power. So that's what we're going to give him, is more power, and we're going to give him more glory, and we're going to do a lot for him as we do this. So they did. And still, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel said, no, we're not bowing down to your God.
Right. I wondered always why Daniel was with them but not thrown in the furnace too.
I think he was higher in, how much you say, the level of what would be their advisors
That was what I
at
just,
the time.
like Daniel chapter 2, 49 at the very end says that he sat in the king's gate. So he wouldn't have had to bow because he was promoted by the king.
Yeah. So you have people that, even though they were in God's care, there was different, you almost hate to say different levels, but people that were expected to perform at a different level, we'll say.
Yeah.
Not that they were any different to God, they were all valuable, but God had chosen some that would represent him, and he found a few that would represent him. So they got thrown into the furnace, and I think we all should know the story that while they were in there, the people that threw them in died because the flames were so hot that the flames came out. I think the flames came out physically and just almost slapped them. And
that's how I've always pictured it. It's funny that you say that.
So they weren't able to continue, but the 3 Hebrew boys that were in the furnace, when the king did look in, he said, I see 4, and one is likened unto the Son of Man.
That always confused me, that part. How did he know what the Son of Man looked like?
I think it was revealed to him by the Holy Spirit.
The Spirit bears witness.
Mine, and the reason that they're okay in here is because of me, not because of something else.
So even an unbeliever would profess the truth.
Yeah. Well, he needed to know. He needed to know to protect his own people. He needed to know this God that these 3 served, how it was able to deliver them from the fiery furnace that he had heated up hotter than ever before. And he threw them in, and they're in there dancing around.
I wonder what they did when they came out the other side, you know?
They probably sat down like they were in church and sat down.
I sure hope not, because I think that God would be a little disappointed. Like, did I not literally just bring you through a fire, and that's all you can give me?
Mm. Can you imagine the fear that was on the people when they walked out? That was all around, that the army or whoever was all around, and they seen this thing that these 3 boys had, you wouldn't say suffered, but experienced, we'll say.
Right.
So they were able to walk out, climb out of the furnace, and not even be burnt. How do you grab a hold of hot steel and not get burnt?
You would literally melt.
You would, under normal circumstances.
Well, it consumed the soldiers that threw them in.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah, and they were normal humans.
I mean, just a fire is just hot when it's a fire. And you heat up metal and steel and you grab a hold of it. I envision them having to grab a hold of the door to get out, I guess is why I say that is.
Oh, yeah.
They had to get out of this tank or this firebox.
What did they use that fire for other than torturing the Christians?
I think they probably used it for melting steel and making weaponry and whatever they needed a furnace for. So you know that those furnaces get extremely hot. If you know anything about melting steel and separating steel, that they wanted to have a furnace somewhere. So they had one big enough to get 3 people in. Amazing story. So what do we learn about God in this one? We learn that God is able to protect his people, even in dire situations, if they are standing for him. Not just if they blurt it out, but if they actually stand for him in the time of trouble, in the same way Daniel did as time went on.
Well, Daniel stood and went through a trial and then was promoted to be like the equal to the king.
Yeah, so he was the one that they all came and got the king to sign, and
Yeah.
that because he was praying 3 times a day.
So the lions didn't eat Daniel.
No.
And the fire didn't kill the Hebrew boys.
It's amazing how God takes people's excuse and says, okay, with your logic, it wasn't that hot. But with your logic, I killed the people that threw them in.
Right.
So now we know it was hot.
Right.
With Daniel, the lions weren't hungry, but they were definitely hungry when he threw in the people that wanted him thrown in. So
that is true.
Yeah, so you can't say they weren't hungry or vicious.
Right.
You have to go to that God made a difference and can make a difference and does make a difference when his people stand for him, even in troubled times. So we see that story had what we would say a good ending. It was a good ending for those believers in God.
Right.
But it was not a good ending for those that did not believe in God. I think one interesting thing about Nebuchadnezzar, if you read through Nebuchadnezzar, he gets to the point to where he gives his testimony about God Jehovah. And if you've never read it as being a king that was turned out to 7 times over, that his hair grew long and his nails were long, and he was almost what we would say insane. And then he came back to his senses and came in. If you've never read his testimony about God, you need to go back and seek that out. I don't know the exact chapter and things of it right now, but if you go see what he says about God, but knowing that he wasn't a Hebrew, you find that he says a lot of things about God that he learned as king, that he learned that God had dominion over the whole earth. So I think if you've never sought that out, go back and find out where Nebuchadnezzar begins to speak about God and understand what he went through. So if you read the rest of the book, I believe it's in Daniel. If you read through the book of Daniel and you find out that, hey, he went through all of this, but he returned back. And then obviously he made another mistake, and I'm not going to tell you what that one was. But even though he knew all these things about God that he learned, it's for people to learn about God. And for those that didn't believe in God in the beginning, it kind of gives you a pattern of someone that didn't believe in God. We just talked about that part.
Right.
And then he turned and he did believe that God was ruler of heaven and earth. And read what he says about God. I think it's pretty amazing
for people.
Yes, there is. We struggle as ministers and people that want to spread the gospel and how to get people to believe in this day and time that we live in is one of the challenges that we have. And we have plenty of excuses of not going. And some of those excuses of not going are on people's signs that's standing out in front of a church and saying, we just don't believe that. Well, Nebuchadnezzar didn't believe it either. Neither did the people that threw in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah. Neither did Nebuchadnezzar, but they became believers because of the works of God. So what should we do as churches?
Believe in God for real.
We need to get in and believe in God and seek his glory in our church. Seek his glory in the church till, I think there's a verse in the Bible that refers to taste me and see that I'm good.
Yeah.
And I remember a time when I was preaching in church, and the glory of God did come into the church. And it was almost like a cloud came into the church till I could actually taste the humidity in the air. And it was so clean.
Yeah.
I can't really explain it. I know people wouldn't maybe not believe it, but it's not going to change my mind.
But I know what you're talking about because it has happened to me.
Explain it then.
I can't. I say all the time, earthly words can't describe heavenly things.
It was just almost like a refreshing.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Like
cool and
but heavy at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why you said humidity.
Mm-hmm.
That
It
makes
was
sense.
almost like humidity to me that just entered in. And I was like, wow. And not only could I feel it, but I could see it hovering above the people.
That I have seen.
And I said, raise your hands. And some people did. Some people didn't.
Man, I will say that's good. Good advice. So pay attention to this part. If your preacher or leader of the church that you respect says to raise your hands, just do it. I have never been disappointed. Okay. Yeah, it's like pushing through a cloud and feeling all the amazing above it, but it takes effort to get in there.
It does. We're going to cut out. It's been 15 minutes. So we said we're going to try to stay to it. And we are, yes, that's a good
very
explanation.
Good description. Better than mine was.
And I long for those days again me too. In church. And I believe I know what it takes to get there. So we're going to strive to get there.
Wait, well, you got to read this comment now.
All right, go ahead.
It's like standing on the edge of the ocean in the Bay Area. A lot of people describe it as the same feeling that you get standing on the Israeli coast.
Interesting.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. So we have witnesses already.
That's awesome.
So that's always good to have witnesses.
Yeah, it is.
But we are going to cut out. We're going to try to keep it to around 15 minutes or less because people get bored easily and quickly in today's time. So we're going to try to oblige and squeeze our comments into a tighter focus. So may God bless you, keep you, encourage somebody, and be encouraged. And be an encouragement if you can. And pray for our country. Pray for mercy is my desire.
Yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow, Lord willing.